Today we will talk about variables and data types in Java. So let's start with talking about what a variable is. So variable is basically a named memory location in which data is stored. You For your data to be stored, you need a container, right? You can't randomly store your data onto a random memory location. You need a special variable which will hold your data, and then you can use that data for further calculations or other operations. So variable is the container for data. It is like a named memory location where your data is stored, right? So in a variable, data is stored as long as your program keeps running. As soon as your program terminates, all variables are also destroyed. So data is also destroyed. So that's also a key thing to note. So variable is a temporary memory since it is stored onto the RAM. Okay, next we have data types. So each variable has a certain data type. We will talk more about data type in a minute. But for now, you need to know that each variable has a certain data type. So, for example, a variable can only store numbers, a variable can only store text or a single character. It depends on what data type are you using for that specific variable. So, data type of variable will remain same throughout the whole program. So that's also what you need to remember. So assignment statement is used to give a value to a variable. We will talk more about this one later. Now let's talk about data types. So Java, uh, there are multiple data types like byte, short, int, double, float, long, boolean, char, and string. So all these data types except string are known as primitive data types because they are part of the core Java. They come with the core features of Java. So all these data types are known as uh, primitive data types. But string, it's not a primitive data type; it's a class. So whenever we use create a string, we are actually creating an object rather than a variable. So you also need to remember this. So all others are given assigned to a variable store declared with a variable. So each data type can be assigned to a variable. For example, suppose you want to create a variable number. So we can assign int or short, byte, double float. So that's what you need to know. You can assign uh, a certain data type to a single variable. So and data that, for example, if you want to store numeric data, you may want to use int. So and that data will be stored right into the variable. Also, one more thing about variables is that variables have certain rules. For example, a variable can have length up to 31 characters, I think. So that's what the maximum length of variable name is, right? Also, a variable name must begin with an underscore or a letter. That is from A to Z. It might be capital or small, doesn't matter, but convention is to begin it with small letter. So that's also one important feature. You can't start a variable name with a number or a symbol or a space, nothing like that. So you need to remember these three rules when you are creating variables. So moving now, we will discuss some famous data types that you will be working with. First of all, we have strings. So anything that is written in double quotation is known as a string. We talked about it a bit in our previous lecture also. So now you can see what a string is. It's a collection of text enclosed in double quotation marks. So anything that comes into double quotations is a string. So it is a collection of characters. It is a non-primitive data type. It's actually an object, right? It's a class. So whenever you're using it, you are creating an object rather than a variable. So that's different from other data types. So examples are hello world value. As you can see, both of them are two different strings enclosed in quotation marks. Also, you don't have to write alphabets. You can store anything in it. For example, I can write hello 123 world, or hello at the rate of, or ampersand world. So you can store anything in a string. So moving on, we have int. Int is the most famous integer data type. It is used to store all integers in a fixed range. We will talk more about range later. So it can store integers, negative, positive. So, and also it can't store decimal values. It only takes the non-fractional part of a number and stores it. For example, 10, 20, 100, 10,000, and you name it, all these are integer values. So int data type is also important one. Float and double. So float and double are both used to store decimal values. So you might be wondering why float and double when we can use one. They slightly differ a bit. We will talk more about these later. For now, you need to know is that they both store decimal values. An example is 12.2 or 1.0 or 0.0 and up to so on. So moving on, we have char. Char is used to basically store a single character. So it could be any character. It could be a number, or a symbol, or a letter, alphabet. So it could be any character. The condition is that it must be a single character, and it's enclosed in quotation marks like this. For example, A is a character here. So moving on, we have Boolean. So Boolean is also a very important data type which helps you to test conditions, or get the desired result from the computer. So it is like a flag, like a signal, like it has two states, 0 or 1, true or false, right? It can only be assigned true or false. That's it. That's all to it. So yeah, this boolean value can be given true or false. For example, suppose you are checking a list of clients, and you want to see whether your client exists in the list or not, right? So what you want to do is create a variable of boolean type. You assign it false. Then once it is found, you can assign it true. So based on that, you can test whether the client exists in a list or not. So that's one usage of it. So moving on, we have declaration and initialization. So when we give a certain data type to a variable, it is known as variable declaration. So any data type given to a variable is known as variable declaration. For example, suppose we want to create a variable named number to store integers, right? What we will do, the syntax is like set of rules for a programming language. So what you want to do, you always write the data type first. For example, I want to create an integer number, so I will write int first. So that will tell my compiler that I want to create a variable of integer. So what you want to do is write int, and then you write the variable name. It can be any name at all, as long as you follow those rules which I explained before. So for example, here a variable is created int number, right? Number is a variable which can store any um any integer value, right? You can give it any values during your program once it has been declared. So similarly, you can create a string name. For example, here name is our variable, string is data type, and name is actually an object since string is a class, but you can think of it as a variable. So this is also how we declare. We can also declare a char variable of char data type. So here we are declaring a variable named ch and assigning it char. That will tell our compiler that ch is a variable which can store all which will store characters, single character, right? So that's done. That's the declaration part. Initialization is the process of giving a certain value to a variable. For example, here we declared a variable number. Now you wanna assign it a value, right? You wanna give it a value. So what you have to do is you have to write number equals to 10. That will tell our compiler that 10 is being stored in a number. This statement will cause 10 to be stored in a number. Similarly, for example, there's another way you can do declaration and assign initialization in one single statement. For example, here we are declaring a character known as char, and then we are giving it a value right right beside declaration. So you can do both things at once as well. It depends on your need and your style. You can do both, but the recommended thing is to first declare the variable and then give it a value. So yeah, that's how we declare and initialize variables. Also, you need to know, for example, once you have declared a variable, for example, once you have declared number, you can't redeclare it again in that whole function unless in that whole method, sorry. So unless it's in some other method. So you need to watch out for that. Variable can be declared only once. Each name is unique. You can declare other variables of integer type. For example, you can declare int number one, number two, number three, up to so on. Any name you want, but you must know that a name must never repeat. Each variable name must be unique. Also, you can assign only the corresponding value to it, right? For example, if I try to assign it 10.2, it won't work because number can only store integers. So you need to watch out for that. Similarly, here we are giving it char data type, so we can only give it a single character in double quotation. Sorry, single quotation. If you try to give it a number or a string, it won't accept it. So you need to look out for that. Lastly, we need to discuss data types along with their ranges. Each data type has a certain range. For example, a byte data type, it can only store numbers from -128 to 127. For example, you can't store 130 or 150 in a byte since it's out of range. Similarly, you can't store -200 or anything below -128 or higher than 127 can't be stored in a byte. Similarly, short data type, it also has a range. You can see it from here. My -32,768 to 32,767. So that's the range of a short. Similarly, int has a range. These are the range of values in which it can store a value. If you try to store a value below this, uh, an underflow will occur. Similarly, if you try to store a value greater than this, then overflow will occur in your program. Similarly, long has a range. As I explained before, float and double both are used to store decimals, but they have different ranges. As you can see, it can store decimal up to store 6 to 7 decimal places, right? It can store up to 15 decimal places numbers. You can look them up further on the internet. So Boolean stores true or false values, as I have already explained. And char stores a single character. It can also store ASCII values. Actually, at the back end, each ASCII value of each character is getting stored. So that's also a feature that you can work with. So yeah, and one more thing, as you can see, all four of these store integers, but they also have different size in memory. So you might wanna choose the right data type according to your requirement. So it takes the minimum size. For example, if you know your number is going to be between 0 and 10, then you use byte. Otherwise, if you are not sure, you use int, or if you think your calculations are going to be extremely large, then use long. So that's it for today's video. Thank you.